Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats and turn your attention to our screens for a special presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Brother Robert Bimonte, NCEA Executive Vice President, and Dr. Margaret Curran, Vice Chair of the NCEA Board, for a special announcement.
Oh, if looks could kill, I'd be dead. Karen, I know you wanted no fuss and no recognition, but we really could not pass up this opportunity to publicly say thank you. Thank you for all that you have done these last 8 years. Your influence on Catholic education throughout this country has been a gift to all of us and a gift to the Church that truly needs to be honored, celebrated, and proclaimed. So on behalf of the staff of NCEA, on behalf of all of those gathered here and all of those who could not join us, thank you. Thank you for Thank you for your passion. Thank you for your commitment to Catholic education. But most importantly, thank you for touching our lives with your goodness.
The NCEA Board of Directors also wants to express its gratitude for the tremendous influence you have had at the NCEA. In recognition of the outstanding leadership, direction, and service you have given to us and to Catholic education, it is my privilege to announce the creation of the Dr. Karen M. Risto Innovation Award, to be presented annually to an individual, school, or program that has furthered the mission of Catholic education through an innovative program or approach. This award will be presented for the first time next year at the 2014 NCEA convention in Pittsburgh.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking and welcoming Dr. Karen Risto. Haven't you noticed I've been avoiding you?
I have. Thank you very much. Now I know why some staff people have been avoiding me. Because I truly asked, I went no fuss. But I do want to say what a joy it's been for me to be the president of NCEA and travel all over this country and a few other ones, and to see and to meet you, and to know what good work you are all doing. Every day when I'm with you has been an inspiration. I am particularly happy about the Innovation Award, and I'll tell you why. Because that's an award for you. I'm glad my name is on it, but it's for you. I want to see how we can honor those of you who are so creative, so imaginative, so persistent, that you're doing wonderful things in education and in religious education that really shows what good educators we are, what good catechists we are, and how in our professional way, we are leading the way in religious education. So I will be happy to come back next year and give that award to you. I just know in my heart, because of the freedom that we have to be educators and catechists, that nothing needs stand in our way to lead the way. So will you continue, please, for me to be innovative and lead the way in good education and good catechesis. Thank you. Thank you. And now, it is now my dearest pleasure to introduce to you Sister Kavina Keating, the superintendent of our host archdiocese. Kavina, where are you? Well, let's have our parade. I thought we were having a parade. All right, now we'll have convening. Okay, are you going to go?
The Archdiocese of Galveston-Houston is elated to host the 2013 gathering of the National Catholic Educators Association. As your host, we're proud to welcome you to our sister cities and hope you get the chance to get to know Houston, the fourth largest, exciting, and entertaining metro area in the country. And Galveston, our nearby coastal playground. We hope you enjoy your visit, and blessings to all.
Howdy, everyone. I'm just a twitter from head to hoof that y'all are here. What part of y'all is it you don't understand? I reckon y'all includes those who serve in Catholic schools, religious education, Catholic colleges and universities, seminaries and libraries, and members of school boards, commissions, and councils. Y'all from the West Coast, let's see those hands waving. And y'all from the East Coast. Y'all from the North. Y'all from the South. Y'all from beyond our coasts, other countries. Ireland is here, I know. And y'all from Texas, it's its own country. All y'all, that's the plural for y'all, are most welcome to the City of Houston and the Archdiocese of Galveston-Houston. You're making history. This is a first, and we just love first. Thank you for being here. You are very important in the life and mission of the church. I myself wasn't born in Texas, but I got here as soon as I could. I see that you did too. Texas is neither southerner nor western. Texas is Texas. And Texas, when you're in Texas, you're on the third coast. You might have wondered since you came, even looking from the window of your hotel, why there's so much traffic in Houston. Well, we follow the rule of the Old West. One man, one horse. I've learned a few things here myself. One is that you're far, far, far safer on a racetrack than on Houston freeways. And you can't drink coffee on a running horse. If someone describes you as big hat, no cattle, it's not exactly a compliment. It's all talk and no action. This morning, when I was coming in, I met Bishop Vasquez, and he's a Texan. And I asked him if he had met the keynote speaker, Father Barron, yet. And he said, "We've howdied, but we ain't shook yet." I think this means that they met briefly, but there was no formal introduction. Now, I want to be very clear, because Bishop Vasquez is a very good friend. It may not have been Bishop Vasquez, because there were a number of you at the bar last night very late. And since we're the hosts, we had to stay there too. So I'm really not sure what I was seeing or hearing this morning. But we're fixing to have a grand time, and I reckon we ought to begin. But first, I must take a moment to acknowledge how touched I've been by the support and expert help I've received in this endeavor from far and near, with special thanks to NCEA, to the Great Region 10, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Texas, and to good friends who are some of our vendors, and my own Diocese of Galveston-Houston, the superb planning committee, which included chancery officials, clergy, religious education, fabulous principals, and hundreds of volunteers whom you'll see hosting throughout the convention. At the risk of being decapitated, that's a kind of a Texas point of view, I must name and acknowledge two people, and if they could please stand. Nadine Mauser, who chaired the planning committee. She's one of our premier principals. Where are you, Nadine? Where are you? And Dr. Sandra Derby, who superbly chaired the liturgy. Where's Sandra? Thank you so much. Now, please, for my sake, don't miss the booths. Have you seen the booths? The decorative booths around the convention center. Each school created one. And think about the fact that one of our principals is from Canada, and he thought we were saying boat. That we wanted him to make a boat. That made sense to him because we're near the bay, we're near the Gulf. And it was the Texas accent that caused the confusion, certainly not my Irish accent. And those of you who have exposure to working with elementary and high schools, you know that they see the world differently. When you ask elementary schools to make a boot, they get excited. They start thinking about colors and materials and designs, and they chat about it. Secondary, they politely say, "Yes, sister, you got it." One high school principal kept texting his bootmaker regularly. One of the others would say, "Our boot moves, make it move." Then someone else would say, "Our boot has lights, put lights on it." And another high school principal said he hired to get the boot made. Yes, he needed an admissions director, and the first interview question was, "Can you make a boot?" "Yes," says the applicant, with my hands tied behind my back. "I have a triple major in art and crafts and what have you." "You're hired." So the applicant said, "I thought you needed an admissions director." "Yes, but I need a boot made. You can learn admissions." So please, for my sake, and I'm among friends, right? If you put down anything on your evaluation, please say that you like the boots. Ultimately, remember, from a Texas point of view, you can put your boots in the oven, but that doesn't make them biscuits. So say whatever you want, it is what it is, you know. Many of you have been to NCEA a number of times. Let me see the hands of those who've been here many times to NCEA over the years. Very good. So when someone asks you this week how it's going, you ought to talk Texan and say, "This ain't my first rodeo." Welcome again, everyone, and please enjoy. Y'all enjoy.
You're too much. I love it. I just got out my evaluation card, Kavina, and I wrote, "I love the boots." Last night we honored some particularly outstanding people with national awards, and I want to tell you just a little bit about them. The Father Al Koob Award was presented to Father Ron Nuzzi of the University of Notre Dame. Like one of our first presidents, Father Nuzzi has made a significant contribution to Catholic education through his teaching, research, and service, particularly in the preparation of school leaders. Kathleen Sapelka was awarded the Father John Myers Award by Father John Myers himself. Kathleen is a model leader and tireless in her ministry in the Archdiocese of Milwaukee. She's brought new energy, new ideas, inspiration to everyone in the community. Kathleen is an intelligent and practical visionary. The Catherine McNamee Award, which celebrates diversity, was presented to St. Francis de Sales School in Houston. And you see there both the school and Sister Catherine giving the award. This is a place of actually, I would say, diversity, if there is such a thing. The school is home to students and families and teachers from a mix of cultures and colors, a home to families from many different economic levels, and home to students with varying needs, from those who need educational assistance to the very able. Here's a school made up of everybody working together, following the gospel message. Every single person and the gifts they bring to the community is valued. Suzanne Bordonado received the Dr. Leonard D. Fiore Award for her years, many, as a parental advocate. Sue has worked both with the Illinois Catholic Conference to promote legislative support for children in Catholic schools, but has also spent her time educating and guiding parents to participate in their children's education. Sue has been and will probably continue to be a great gift to literally thousands of parents. The NCEA Seminary Department honored Monsignor Stephen Rossetti with the John Paul II Award. The award is given to a North American church leader to affirm the creativity, leadership, and service who, like Monsignor Rossetti, contributes to the development and formation of priests. Monsignor Rossetti serves as an associate professor of pastoral studies and is director of ministerial programs at Catholic University. He recently was the director of St. Luke's Institute. Other awards will be given throughout this convention to a number of remarkable people. Tomorrow morning and again on Thursday, you will see a slideshow with their photos around this convention main hall. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you some very important and particularly special people to you, our staff. Let me introduce first Brother Robert Bimonte, the current Vice President of NCEA, Dr. Regina Haney, Executive Director of the Boards and Councils Department, Kathy Mears, the Executive Director of the Elementary Department, Sister Dale McDonald, Director of Public Policy and Research, Dr. Lori Dahlhoff, Executive Director of the Religious Education Department, Mickey Abadamarco, Associate Director of Religious Education, Matt Russell, Director of the Secondary Department, and Monsignor Jeremiah McCarthy, Executive Director of the Seminary Department. So let's give them a hand. I would also like to mention that Dr. Len DiFiore and Sister Catherine McNamee, former presidents, are with us as well. Barbara Keebler, Director of Communications, is with us. Wade Marshall, Director of Membership Services. Ken Famulari, Director of Advancement. And two other people I'd like to mention is Brother Stephen Como, probably the best help a person could ever have, and Amy Durkin, the Director of Events, who organized this whole deal. And then other people from NCEA. Just stand. Would you all stand? Thank you. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you the newest member of our Board of Directors, our Board Chair, Bishop Blaise Cupich, the Bishop of Spokane. Bishop Cupich has been a friend of NCEA for many years. Some of you will remember him as a speaker at the Wisdom and Witness Conference, and more of you will remember him as the keynote speaker at our annual convention when we met in Indianapolis. There are many things to appreciate about Bishop Cupich: his educational background, his service in other dioceses, his work at the Bishops' Conference, his seminary work, and the fact that he comes from a family of 9. But one thing that's important to us is that he truly understands NCEA as an association that includes and involves all the educational ministries of the church, and for that we are grateful. Would you join me in welcoming Bishop Supich? Short, thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that warm welcome and introduction. My task is to introduce our board members who are here with us at the convention. But before I do so, I want to thank His Eminence Cardinal DiNardo for leading us in worship this morning and for getting us started with a wonderful and inspiring message this morning. Thank you, Cardinal. I also saw as we were exiting Archbishop Fiorenza. I don't know if he is still here, but if you are, Archbishop, please stand. Are you here? We want to welcome you. And I'd ask that you hold your applause for our Board of Trustee members. I will announce their name and then ask them to stand, those who are here. Working with Boards and Councils Department are Sandra Leatherwood and Stephanie Welling. Elementary Schools Department, Margaret Curran and Sister Edward William Quinn. Secondary Schools Department, Mary Ann Biting and Dottie McCrae. Religious Education, Patricia Manuli. And from the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, Sister John Mary Fleming. Please stand and be recognized. Thank you. I look forward to being with you this week.
I did not introduce to you Brother William Campbell, who is the director of the Case Department, the department that services the needs and helps people in the superintendency. That is because Bill is doing something very important this morning. Yesterday on the way to the convention, Sister Patricia Elaine Earle was on her way here when a van she was in turned over, and she is in very serious condition, and Bill has visited her in the hospital and is taking care of contacting the community. So would you remember Sister Patricia, who is a faculty member at Marymount in Arlington, Virginia, and is a dear educator of future Catholic leaders, and we want to hold Sister in our prayers. Earlier in this year, when I came to Houston for a planning meeting, I was struck by a comment one of the team members made when we were talking about including all the nationalities and cultures represented in the archdioceses in some way in these liturgies. And the person explained to me that in this region, everyone is a minority. And I began to think how interesting that is, that everyone is a minority. No one is a majority. So that would mean that no one group is more important than anybody else. And how appropriate then the archdiocesan motto here is, all to be one in Christ. A proclamation that everyone is welcome, that invites everyone, that no one is more welcome than anyone else. We began this part of the convention, you watched a parade of flags that represented the archdiocese, the United States, and flags from the 18 other countries from which attendees come. Frankly, we thought of having a flag for every state. There are 47 states represented at the conference, but actually that was going to be too expensive. So we decided to have one flag to represent the people of the United States, and I think that's okay. So we who are present here represent a variety of people engaged in a variety of ministries, and we are one. Yet sometimes we struggle with that concept, and I think we become our own worst enemies. Too often, we divide into camps: traditionalists, progressives, liberals, conservatives, and we even get kind of critical of what kind of songs we sing or who's wearing what. And seeing what is different when our call is to cherish that which unites us. We have constructed or made up those categories which divide us. Thomas Merton reminded me of a better way to look at this. He asked us to discover a new unity when he wrote, "We are already one, but we imagine that we are not. And what we need to recover is our original unity." So as we come together, we share a common history and a common faith. In our diverse ways, we really do have one spirit. And so here we are assembled under one roof: teachers, catechists, administrators, rectors, pastors, bishops, cardinals, board members, and probably a miracle worker or two. And we're under one roof is very symbolic in its own way. So while we are in Houston, and when we go out from this convention, may we strive to be inclusive, to respect diversity, and nurture that which unites us as we seek to fill the lofty challenge of living and teaching the mission and the faith we proclaim. Think how remarkable that would be. It's now my pleasure to introduce Father Robert Barron. I'm going to guess many of you know Father. You've heard him speak at a meeting, or if you have watched his documentary series Catholicism on public television, or you've seen his television show Word on Fire, or you keep up with Word on Fire on YouTube. Perhaps you've even checked out his movie reviews, or you saw him very recently on television providing commentary on the recent election of Pope Francis. And if you have not heard him, this will be your chance to appreciate him along with many others and become a new fan. Father Barron is presently the rector at Mundelein Seminary for the Archdiocese of Chicago, but through his lectures and extensive travel, he's known as one of the church's best messengers. I know you will enjoy and learn from him. So listen to Father address some of our current concerns, our role in the new evangelization. In fact, why are we calling it new? And what's new about it? And how do we do that in the secularized society that we live in right now? So, Father, we are very grateful you are with us this morning. Thank you.
How long should I go?
Oh, just, well, we can go to 12-ish.
Okay, that's great.
If we get to the video.
All right, good morning to all, or good afternoon, no, still good morning to all of you. Great to be here with you, and thank you for that beautiful introduction, this wonderful opening session, including the liturgy and the parade with the flags, and everything's Texas-sized down here, which I do like. I've been to Texas many times, but I've never been to Houston except for the airport till today, so I'm delighted finally to be here. How many Houston Astros fans are there here? Well, there's a reason I'm grateful to you. I'm a Chicago Cub fan, and last year, the Cubs, who were not known for tearing up the league ever, had one of their worst years on record. We lost more than 100 games, but there was a team worse than the Cubs last year. So I thank you for keeping us out of the cellar. However, I just read, is this true that the Astros, is it as of this year, are changing divisions? Is it, or next year? Because I read a scouting report for the Cubs, and what they said was, well, thanks to the Houston Astros, the road to the cellar is cleared. And so the Cubs are on their way. But, so thank you for that little gift to us Cub fans. Hey, listen, I'm delighted to be with you today and to talk about the new evangelization. Now, I know it's become kind of a joke among my circle. I mean, everybody wants to talk about the new evangelization. So it's, crop dusting and the new evangelization. So I'll just try to cut right to the chase on that. I know John Paul, of course, is associated strongly with the new evangelization, and I'll get to him. But I want to go back to John the 23rd and the press conference at which John the 23rd called Vatican II. At that press conference, he's photographed with this large globe. And it wasn't by accident, because John the 23rd, at that press conference, used for the first time a phrase that became the title of one of the great conciliar documents, namely Lumen Gentium. He said, not the church, but Christ is the Lumen Gentium, the light of the nations. The job of the church is to bring the lumen to the Gentiles, to bring the light of Christ to that whole globe. Now, mind you, John the 23rd famously said Vatican II was not so much a doctrinal council. We weren't fighting about Christology as we did in the early days, or about the Trinity, or about anthropology and salvation as we did at the Council of Trent. We weren't fighting about doctrinal issues, but the Pope thought, we've got to find a better way to bring Christ to the nations. One of my favorite theologians, Hans Urs von Balthasar, wrote a book in the 50s called Schleifung der Bastionen in his original German. It means the raising of the bastions, R-A-Z-I-N-G. And that was the mood of the time. The church had to come out from behind its medieval walls to bring the light, power, and treasure of Christ to the nations. Now, friends, here's, I think, a problem, however. And I'll witness to the fact, I came of age just after Vatican II. I went to first grade in 1965. I came of age in the late 60s, early 70s. I think we took in Vatican II as the modernization of the church. Now, can I suggest that's not quite right? Vatican II was a missionary council whose purpose was the Christification of the world. Is some modernization called for to make that Christification more effective? Sure. But the primary goal was not to bring the church up to date, to modernize the church. It was to Christify the world. Here's a story that I love about Karl Barth, who was the greatest Protestant theologian of the last century. And if you know, in Barth's early writings, he was rather fiercely anti-Catholic. But he had mellowed by the end of his life. And Paul VI invited Karl Barth to come to Vatican II as an observer. So at the last session, Karl Barth himself, the old great Protestant theologian, came. He was so deeply moved, he said, if the Holy Spirit is acting anywhere in the Christian world today, he's acting in the Catholic Church, which, given what Barth said as a young man, is pretty extraordinary. Then he was invited by Paul VI for an audience. Karl Barth thanked the Pope profusely, and then he asked a little question. He said, Holy Father, may I ask, when will you know the church is sufficiently updated? Now, he was playing with that term, right, aggiornamento, updating. But it was a question with a sting in its tail, wasn't it? He was teasingly asking the Pope, are Catholics perhaps allowing the modern world to become the measure of the church? See, the modern world is like any other culture, evangelically ambiguous, to some degree congruent with the gospel and to some degree out of step with it. The church, listen now, never allows any culture it finds itself in to measure it. The church is measured and normed by Christ, and then it goes out to meet and transform the culture in which it finds itself. Vatican II is a missionary council. Now, where do we hear that? We hear it beautifully echoed in Paul VI's magnificent letter, and still anyone interested in evangelization has to read it, Evangelization, where the Pope said the church doesn't have a mission, the church is a mission. To get that in its fullness, I think, is to get the whole of the new evangelization. Everything we're about is bringing the lumen to the Gentiles, bringing Christ to the world. Who was at the synod that helped to produce Evangelii Nunciandi? Well, the young Archbishop of Krakow, called Karol Wojtyła. Therefore, it's no surprise that 3 years later, when he's elected John Paul II, he makes the new evangelization central to his teaching. First time he used the phrase, 1983 in Port-au-Prince in Haiti. John Paul said, the new evangelization is the old evangelization, which means declaring the lordship of Jesus Christ. That's the same in season and out, up and down the centuries. What's new about it? It has to be new, he said, in ardor new in expression, and new in method. So what I want to do in the course of this talk is use that as my structuring logic. It's new in ardor, it's new in expression, and it's new in method. First of all now, ardor. Fire. Isn't it wonderful this Easter season now? We heard it today, but all through the season we hear about the ardor of the early church. These people were on fire with something. John Paul sensed, I think correctly, that we had lost some of that ardor in the years after Vatican II. And again, I'll witness to this, or I'm sure many in this room who are around my age. We come back from Vatican II, this missionary council meant to light the world on fire with Christ. But was it a time of great ardor? I would say no. The church I came of age in, I think, was a church that was often questioning itself. A church that doubted, that wondered what it was about. When I was going through school, all through Catholic school, the typical way to take something in was to hear, well, here's what the church classically taught, but now that's all being sort of reconsidered. We're wondering who we're about. This produced what I've called beige Catholicism. A Catholicism that's lost some of its distinctive color, its pride, its energy, its ardor. Here's something really interesting from Joseph Ratzinger. You know, Ratzinger, along with Schillebeeckx and Kung and Rahner and Congar and de Lubac, was one of the great, victorious figures at Vatican II. The great reformers who had won the day in many ways. Those victorious figures formed a journal after the council called Concilium, the stated purpose of which was to perpetuate the spirit and energy of the council. And again, Ratzinger was on the board when it was founded. But then in 1970, it's a very interesting moment, Ratzinger, along with de Lubac and von Balthasar, broke with the board of Concilium. And they formed a new journal called Communio. And of course, the two journals exist to this day. And sometimes we'll divide Catholics as Concilium versus Communio Catholics. Here's what Ratzinger said as he explained the move that he made. He said, I don't think it's ever a good idea to perpetuate the spirit of any council. Now, mind you, this is a man of the council, par excellence. Ratzinger contributes to the writing of many of the major documents. He was at all of the sessions. He was a peritus. He was a major player at Vatican II. And yet he said, I don't think it's a good idea to perpetuate the spirit of any council. Now, what did he mean? He meant the church has paused in its great history only 20 times in 2,000 years for councils, and thereupon hangs a tale. During a council, the church throws itself into question. The church, to some degree, throws itself into suspense, asking some fundamental questions about itself. Necessary? Yes, from time to time. Important? Absolutely. Vatican II, one of the most important? Yes, indeed. However, Ratzinger said, the church always turns with a certain relief from a council. Now, why? The same reason why we turn with a certain relief from meetings. Do you know what I'm driving at? A lot of this room go to meetings a lot. Important? Yes. Necessary? Yes. But don't you turn with a certain relief from a meeting to get back to your essential work? Yes, we have to pause occasionally and consider what we're about, what we're doing. But then the idea is to bring us back to our work with renewed purpose and enthusiasm. Ratzinger's fear, and I think it was a well-grounded one in 1970, was if the church is in perpetual council, hand-wringing, wondering, questioning, doubting about what it believes, it can't do its fundamental work, which is praising God and bringing Christ to the ends of the world. A beige, hand-wringing church is not an evangelizing church. I think that's what he saw. And I think it's what John Paul II saw when he called for a new ardor, a new fire. Now, where's the fire come from, everybody? Can I suggest to you one thing? It comes from a clarity about the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. I'll tell you a little story. Maybe 5 years ago, I gave a talk at a evangelization conference. I came on maybe the third day of the conference. There were many talks before mine. I got up and I said, hey, everybody, evangelization is about declaring the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. At which point, the whole crowd broke into applause. And I said, on behalf of the risen Jesus, I want to thank all of you. But I was kind of puzzled by it. So after the talk was over, I stopped people and said, what was that all about? And they said, Father, we've been here for 3 days. We've heard about culture, we've heard about sociology, we've read statistics, we've heard about the church. Nobody's mentioned the resurrection. That's a problem. Evangelization is about declaring Jesus Christ risen from the dead. And here's one of the problems, frankly. Too many theologians in the years after the council, I think, soft-pedaled the resurrection, turning the resurrection into a myth, a legend, a symbol, a literary device. Well, now, we're all educators here. I'm trained as an academic. I love faculty lounges, but those theories were cooked up in faculty lounges. You know what I mean? And they've got little to do with the first century. Read the New Testament. I mean, every page from Matthew through Revelation, what do you find? You find what I call a grab you by the lapels quality. These people want to grab the whole world by the lapels and tell them something. They weren't trading in symbols, myths, and legends and literary devices. They were talking about the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. That's the Evangelion, right? The good news that trumps the good news of Caesar's imperial victory. The term was used, in the first century to say Caesar's won a great battle. I have Evangelion for you. Now, the first Christians say, not Caesar, but one that Caesar put to death, but whom God raised from the dead. That's the real Evangelion, the real good news. That's where the ardor comes from. That always stokes the fire. Clarity about the resurrection. Okay, much more we can say about ardor, but I want to move on now to expressions. The age-old faith, yes, the age-old proclamation, but we live in a new time. And therefore, John Paul knew we have got to find new ways of expressing the age-old faith that address the concerns of this time. Now, you heard a little bit about a ministry I've got on the internet, where I do commentaries on various things, and we put them up on YouTube. And when I first started this, I didn't know people could comment. I quickly found out. But actually, I like the comments because I've got a little bit of what the French call the joie de combat. I sort of like to get into the battle, But it enabled me to discover very clearly what is blocking people in the wider culture. It was a huge education. So, I've been teaching for many years, but this was a wonderful way to get outside the choir, into the culture, and find out what's blocking people. So I want to say something real quick about 3 things I've discovered, which call for new expressions. Here's the first one. People out there think of God as a threat to human flourishing. Let me say that again, because, boy, the roots of this, they're right back in the founders of modern atheism, Feuerbach and Marx and company, and they come roaring right up through the new atheists. Before I forget, I'm sure there are high school teachers here. I've heard that there are atheist clubs springing up in high schools. Is that true? Under the aegis of Hitchens and Dawkins and Sam Harris, that young people are kind of intrigued by the new atheists. The view is common out there that God poses a threat to human flourishing. Ludwig Feuerbach, who was the founder of modern atheism, said, "The no to God is the yes to man." That's it, modern atheism in a nutshell. The more I say no to this oppressive figure, the more I can affirm my humanity. Jean-Paul Sartre, here a disciple of Feuerbach, said, "If God exists, I cannot be free. But I am free. Therefore, God does not exist." a competitive view of God. God is the enemy of human flourishing. The more we praise God, the more we have to denigrate the human. Can I suggest to you, friends, that view is very commonly out there. And can I suggest it's born of, to some degree, our inability to express properly our view of God. Thomas Aquinas hardly ever calls God en summum. That means the highest being. He calls God typically ipsum esse subsistens. The Dominicans now know what I'm talking about here. The sheer act of to be itself. You say, well, it's just a vague abstraction. No, it's telling this whole story. God is not a supreme being fussily competing with us for space and attention. Rather, God is that sheer act of to be itself, in and through which we exist. What does the preface for Mass say? In you we live and move and have our being. God isn't competing with us. God is allowing us fully to flourish. You know, just a couple nights ago, I was going through I think it was Easter Sunday night, going through the cable, and I stumbled across the 10 Commandments, the movie, which is so poorly written and so poorly acted, but it's compellingly watchable in a weird way. Well, in fact, I stumbled upon, I think it's the worst writing in the 20th century, but it's the great scene when Moses' wife has spotted Joshua in the cleft of the rock, and she says, Moses, there's a man in the rock. Charlton Heston says, your eyes are as sharp as they are beautiful. Anyway, it's a really poorly written movie. But right after that scene, what happens is Moses goes up to Mount Sinai, and what does he see? He sees a bush that is on fire but not consumed. Now listen to me. Contrast that image to images from Greek and Roman mythology. When the gods enter human affairs, what happens? People are incinerated. Things give way. Things have to blow up and be destroyed because the gods have come crashing in. And then there's the Bible. When God comes close, the bush is not consumed. Rather, it becomes luminous and radiant. St. Irenaeus said in the 2nd century, the glory of God is a human being fully alive. See, that's what Feuerbach didn't get, and Marx didn't get, and Sartre didn't get, and Christopher Hitchens doesn't get. The true God is not a competitor with human flourishing, but it's the very ground of who we are. Let that message go out. Let that message resound. You know, Karen mentioned Thomas Merton. Read that wonderful passage in The Seven-Story Mountain when Merton commences his conversion. He'd stumbled across a book by Etienne Gilson, the great Thomist philosopher. And he discovered exactly what I was telling you about, this subtle philosophy of God as ipsum esse. You know what Merton said? He said, it's funny because I always thought of God as a noisy mythological being. Right. That's the trouble with so much of modernity and postmodernity. So much of the culture today thinks of God as a noisy mythological being. No, the non-competitive God of the burning bush. We got to find a new way to talk about that. Okay? Here's a second thing I found from my YouTube ministry. A second major block to the proclamation of the faith. What I would call the disenchanted world. This is secularism now in its ideological form. The disenchanted world. I mean the view that we human beings can find our ultimate fulfillment in the goods of this world. In wealth and pleasure, in power, in honor. You just get enough of that, you'll be happy. And you know this, don't you? There are priests and avatars of that view everywhere in the culture. Little kids take this view in from the beginning. Every movie, every song, every TV show practically announces that message. But We know what? We know that great Augustinian anthropology. Lord, you've made us for yourself. Therefore, our hearts are restless till they rest in thee. There's no better expression anywhere of a basic Christian anthropology. We know it's true, don't we? That every one of us has been wired for God. Because no matter what truth we attain in this world, it doesn't satisfy the deepest hunger of the mind. Whatever good or justice we attain, it does not satisfy the deepest longing for goodness and justice. Whatever beauty we see or create, it doesn't satisfy our deepest longing. In fact, it awakens it. That's because we've all been wired for God. The great problem with secularism, and I see it all the time, it's a poisonous ideology in the measure that it suppresses what is most distinctively human in us, which is the hunger for God. Let me give you a biblical image for this that I think is a way to find a new expression here. Remember the great story in 1 Kings about Elijah and the priests of Baal? How many priests of Baal are there, by the way? 450. How many prophets of Yahweh? 1. So it goes probably to this day. Millions of avatars of secularism. What's Elijah do? He calls them out. Publicly challenges them. All right, erect the altars to your gods. Call on them. See what happens. I'll erect an altar to the true God, and we'll see what happens. So the priests of Baal erect the altars, and then they pray and they dance around the altars, they cajole, they beg. Notice how Elijah mocks them, remember? Well, they're gods. Maybe they're on vacation. Maybe they're asleep. Some of my Hebrew language scholar friends tell me that one of the implications is maybe they're in the bathroom. I don't know where they are, why they're not responding. And then in their desperation, the priests of Baal, remember, they slash themselves with their swords till the blood flows. But no one answered and no fire came. When Elijah calls upon Yahweh, the fire descends, he wins. Okay. Now, what I want you to see, there's a lot more here than just my God's bigger than your God, right? It's telling a very profound spiritual truth with huge implication for our time. Think of the priests of Baal as all the avatars of secularism today. Think of the altars as wealth, pleasure, power, honor, all the goods of the world. What do these priests say over and over again? What do they demonstrate over and again? Just keep at that. Just keep begging. Just keep asking those gods, and you'll find satisfaction. Right? Now, fellow sinners, we all know about this. We all fall in the same trap. We can say, boy, I just get enough wealth, I'll be happy. So we hop around the altar of wealth. Just enough pleasure. Talk to anyone who's fallen into addictions to alcohol or to food or to sex or pornography. Hop around that altar. Power, same thing. What happens, though? At the end of the day, that process becomes self-destructive. Like the priests of Baal, we wound ourselves in the very act of begging gods who cannot answer the deepest longing of our hearts. God alone will send the fire that answers the deepest longing. And see, friends, I think this is true now for evangelists, for educators, for liturgists. Part of our job today is Elijah's job, which is a emphatic, even public mockery of these false avenues and a reaffirmation that in God alone is our soul at rest. Our hearts are restless till they rest in Him. Quick word now just about a last element from the culture that I see all the time in my internet ministry. It's what Pope Benedict called the dictatorship of relativism. I call it the culture. Do you ever see this with the kids? Whatever. Whatever. What's the dictatorship of relativism? There's no truth. There's just your truth and my truth. No real good in itself. It's what's good for you, what's good for me. Yeah, if you like that sort of thing, that's great, but I like something else, and you leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. Tolerant. Don't get in the way. No, don't bother me, I won't bother you. Any claim that there is an objective truth or goodness or beauty is met with the charge of imperialism, trying to impose yourself on me. Now, what's all this led to? Here's an image that helps me. Think of a big lazy lake, and everybody is lying individually on an air mattress in that big lazy lake. No one touching, no communication, no common effort. Just everybody in their own little space. I won't get in your way. Don't come over and bump into me. I won't bump into you. But we're all individuals resting on the big lazy lake. John Henry Newman said this in the 19th century. What gives a river its energy and movement and power is the firmness of its banks. Within those firm banks, the river moves and it goes. Knock down the banks in the name of freedom or individualism or relativism. What happens is the river opens up into a big, lazy lake. And it produces the culture. Yeah, I guess. Whatever. That's inimical to evangelization. That's what I want you to see. That's inimical to evangelization. Read those New Testament figures. These were not people, right? These were not whatever people. These are people who were on a river that was moving. They had a clear mission. The recovery of that energy is key to evangelization. Here's a distinction from the philosopher Dietrich von Hildebrand that's very simple but very telling. He distinguishes between the merely subjectively satisfying and the objectively valuable. Again, simple distinction, but really telling. The merely subjectively satisfying and the objectively valuable. Now, what's the distinction? The merely subjectively satisfying is something that, you like. It's to your taste. It's something that you privately enjoy. Like I spent 3 years studying in Paris for my doctorate, but I just don't get fancy food. I hate spending $100 on dinner. So I don't really get it. I like spaghetti and meatballs. I like it. It's subjectively satisfying. But it would never occur to me to become an evangelist on behalf of spaghetti, right? I would just say, no, it's what I like. I don't care for fish. I think I'm probably allergic to it. It just makes me sick. But it would never occur to me to say, don't you eat fish? Because that's a matter of private, subjective conviction. But, von Hildebrand said, there's a distinction between that and the objectively valuable. That means something which is so massive in its truth or goodness or beauty, listen now, that it changes you, that it invades your subjectivity and rearranges your way of thinking and feeling and acting. That's the objectively valuable. You walk into the Sistine Chapel and you look up at Michelangelo's frescoes. What's an entirely inappropriate response? Whatever. I'm not into Renaissance frescoes. I mean, see how inappropriate that would be in the face of something that's so overwhelmingly valuable. You listen to Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the Ode to Joy. You don't say whatever. I mean, you just can't. You meet Mother Teresa's sisters. Can you imagine saying, that's just not my taste. I'm not really into that. No, there's something that's so massively and objectively good that you're changed, you're rearranged, and you are sent on mission. The culture is the enemy. Recovering a sense of what is most objectively valuable, which is the Lord God, whose glory is that we be fully alive, that we claim that objectivity and announce it confidently. That's key to evangelization. Okay, quick word now about some methods. I'd been teaching at Mundelein Seminary for many years, and been doing a lot of talks and going around the country and doing retreats and workshops and so on, but I wasn't really that involved with the new media. A turning point was a conversation I had, about maybe 12, 15 years ago, with a priest friend of mine, older priest, and I was complaining. That we Catholics had dropped the ball. Fulton Sheen was a great pioneer, but after Fulton Sheen, we just didn't follow up. And our Protestant friends are so much better at using the old media, the new media. I'm going on and on complaining. He listened very patiently, and he turned to me and said, well, what are you doing about it? I said, what can I do about it? I'm a seminary professor. I mean, I got to teach my courses. I'm writing books. He goes, well, then stop complaining about it. Okay, so that got in my craw, I'll admit. So I went down to WGN Radio. I don't know how many Chicagoans or Midwesterners here. WGN is one of the biggest radio stations in Chicago. And I said, hey, just for fun, tell me, what would it cost to have a sermon program on WGN? And she said to me, well, we have a good time Sunday morning at 5:15. And it would be $50,000 for the year. So I said, okay. And so, I went to the Archdiocese. I said, for $50,000, I can get on the radio on WGN. And once the laughter died down, she said, Father, if you can raise it, we're behind you 100%. So I went to this parish where I was helping out on the weekend. It was one of the wealthier areas of Chicago. And they gave me the money. We raised the $50,000. So I got on the radio, discovered that actually a lot of people listen at 5:15, including truckers. A lot of truckers going through the Chicago area listen to me. I stayed on that for about 3 years. Then I went into Relevant Radio. Do you have that down here? Relevant Radio, National Catholic, radio network, and they picked up my program. And then we started doing DVDs of retreats and lectures and so on. And EWTN picked up some of those, and that got it out a little bit wider. But right around that time, Cardinal George, who's my boss back home, took me aside one day at the seminary and said, I want to talk to you. Always a bit disquieting, of course, when a cardinal wants to talk to you. And I said, yes, Your Eminence. And he said, I'd like you to jumpstart evangelization. I said, what does that mean? And he said, I don't know, but I want you to do it. That's literally true. And so we started with, I gave some talks and lectures in and around Chicago, and I think, they were good and they were helpful. But at the end of that year, I said, Your Eminence, there's something kind of charmingly 19th century about this, that I'm gathering people in rooms and giving talks. How much more we could do through the new media. And he got that right away. And that's where Word on Fire, my media ministry, was born. And I mentioned the YouTube videos. They came from a donation. And the lady that gave me the money said, do something creative with this. And so YouTube had just started. This is back in 2006, maybe. And I just heard about this new website. You put whatever you want on there. At the time, it was like, my cat jumps off the roof. It had 4 million views. And I thought, well, okay, let's see if we can do something a bit more elevated. So I started doing commentaries. And the first one was on Martin Scorsese's movie, The Departed, which I'd just seen. And I talked about the way he portrays evil in that movie. Anyway, we made the first ones, and no idea who'd watch. Absolutely. Would my mother watch? She still doesn't, really, but I didn't know who'd watch them. But in time, they gathered steam, and they garnered an audience. And as I say, the comments began to come in, which I enjoyed. I was able to get into the discussion. YouTube, by the way, tells you who your audience is. And my audience is largely young men in their 20s and 30s, which I love. That's a group that the church has a hard time reaching, right? I'll tell you one story. This is not typical, but it's wonderful. A young guy, 19 years old, wrote to me and said, Father, I hated the Catholic Church, and I hated Catholic priests. But I love Bob Dylan. And I love Bob Dylan, so I've done a number of videos on Bob Dylan's songs and the biblical themes in them, right? So one night he was Googling Bob Dylan, and up came my video. And he said, there I saw you with your Roman collar, and I wanted to delete you, And so he said, but I don't know, something possessed me, and I watched the video. And then I watched another one of your Bob Dylan videos, and then it led me to other videos, and then to your website, and then this and that. And again, this is not typical, but it's wonderful. He said, and this year I'm joining the RCIA program. So thank you, it's nice. And again, it's not typical, but it's, you know, the sowing of a seed that this technology allows us is something. I mean, Fulton Sheen would have given his right arm for that sort of outreach, wouldn't he? You know, he had to rely on people tuning in the TV or the radio at a certain time. Now, you put something on YouTube, it's 24/7 all over the world. Wonderful tool we've got. Here's a second quick story I'll tell you about YouTube. This is from a young lady, and this was the period when Charlie Sheen was having all his troubles, you know, a year and a half ago, and she was Googling his name, and she comes to a website, Charlie Sheen, which led her to Martin Sheen, Charlie's dad, right, who was a great actor. And Martin Sheen took his name from Fulton Sheen. Do you know that his stage name he took from Fulton Sheen? So Martin Sheen led her to Fulton Sheen, and then Fulton Sheen led her to me, Catholic preaching. And so then she started watching the videos, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, well, Lord, if you can use Charlie Sheen to bring people, you know, fair enough. Fair enough. But that's the beauty of it, I think. That's the wonder of this new technology. And I would encourage everybody, you know, it's really not all that complicated to get involved in that and to make videos. People are infinitely more likely to watch a video than to read an article, as you know. So there's a revolution going on. Just a last observation, then I'll stop. About methods. The true, the good, and the beautiful, right? The three great transcendentals. In our postmodern, relativistic culture, the truth is problematic for a lot of people. If you say, hey, this is true, the hackles go up, right? A lot of people react to it. Even more so, the good. Hey, what you're doing, that's not right. That's not right. Don't do that. That's immoral. Boy, the hackles go up, especially in our relativistic postmodern culture. But I'd submit to you, the beautiful is much less offensive to people. It's much more winsome. Show somebody Notre Dame Cathedral. Show somebody the Sistine Chapel. Show somebody Mother Teresa's sisters. Look how beautiful that is. When I was a kid, another baseball, I grew up around Detroit, and the Tigers were my first team. And my dad took me when I was 7 to my first pro baseball game. And I still remember it. It's vividly in my mind. I see it right now. Coming up out of the underground there, and then seeing that bright green grass of Tiger Stadium, the white uniforms of the Detroit Tigers, and throwing the ball around and batting. What I was struck by first was the beauty of baseball, which led me to what? To want to play. Right? So right away I joined the T-ball team. I wanted to play right away. The beautiful leads to the good. And then, once I had played for a long time, I understood it from the inside. I understood the rules of baseball. Even something as arcane as the infield fly rule. Baseball fans know. You think baseball's beautiful, and then, boy, you want to play it. Then, from the inside, you understand how and why these rules operate. Can I suggest to you, and here I'm following von Balthasar, that's a good evangelical strategy, to move from the beautiful to the good to the true. Can I say again, witnessing to the time I came of age, late 60s, 70s, what a lot of people, including myself, witnessed was a church bickering with itself, largely over sex and authority issues. Now, important issues, absolutely. All these people of goodwill, absolutely. But see, it's a bit like trying to draw a kid into baseball by arguing about the infield fly rule. You know, and I'm not trying to trivialize it for a second, but you don't begin by saying, let's clarify the infield fly rule. No, you begin with the beauty of the game. Begin with the great players. Watch how Roberto Clemente rounds the bases. Watch how Ted Williams swings, you know, or A-Rod, we'll update it. Look at that. How beautiful, how wonderful. Now, don't you want to play? Yes. And then once you play, you'll understand the rules from the inside. I would suggest to you that's a very helpful evangelical strategy. And see, we are the religion of the beautiful. One of the great geniuses of Catholicism is we didn't throw away the beautiful. Use it to draw people in a winsome way. Okay, what I want to show you is just to take a couple of minutes. Many of you have told me you've been watching the Catholicism series, which is now been used around the country. I'm very grateful for that. But my Word on Fire ministry has just completed a new video on the new evangelization. And the talk you just heard is kind of the structure of that video. What I want to do now is just show you, it's a very brief excerpt. The first part is from the middle of the documentary. And it's a little more ruminative, it's a bit more speculative. Then the last bit, just a few minutes kind of from the trailer that will show you some of the energy of it. We filmed in Australia, in England, and the US. I was giving talks in those countries last year. 3 very secularized cultures. And I want to just show you now a little bit of this video, which is coming out next fall for the school year. Okay? There's a third aspect of the contemporary culture I'd like to engage with the power of the gospel. It's what Pope Benedict called the dictatorship of relativism, what I would call the culture. What I mean is, there's no objective truth or objective justice or beauty. There's just your sense of truth and mine, your sense of what's good and mine. I'll tolerate you as long as you tolerate me. But any attempt to defend the objectivity of truth is met by a whatever. Now, the roots of this attitude go back a long way, at least to the beginning of the modern period. But the most influential figure, I think, is the 19th century German philosopher, Friedrich Nietzsche.
Nietzsche is one of the most important modern philosophers because he really was the one who unblinkingly looked at this and said, look, what science shows us, strictly speaking, is a world with no moral facts whatsoever. That's what it shows us. And that means that the one who is strong and powerful and has a will, if he or she is able to carry it out, can do whatever he or she wants to. And that's a good thing. If you have a problem with that, you better have some arguments, because otherwise it's just your baseless opinion, one preference opposed to another. But that's why Nietzsche is so valuable. Not because of what he proposed, it's horrific, but because he forces a confrontation with the assumptions that are simply taken for granted in liberal modernity.
There's a direct line that runs from Nietzsche to Jean-Paul Sartre, the founder of modern existentialism, which Sartre summed up as existence precedes essence. A fancy way of saying that my freedom comes first, and then I decide who or what I shall be. Now, if you think all this seems a little philosophical and abstract, think again. In 1992, the U.S. Supreme Court, in the matter of Casey versus Planned Parenthood, said this: at the heart of liberty is the right to determine one's own concept of existence, of meaning, and of the universe. What all of this subjectivism and relativism has led to is the culture, the whatever culture.
Folks sense that they can sort of meet their material needs and in fact enjoy, by the normal measurements, a good life. But there's a danger, I think, that you cross over into a sort of purely utilitarian way of living. You have no larger sense of what defines right or wrong in the society.
Many would say something in secular academia would say something like, oh, all values and morality is constructed, right? It is all, in a certain sense, contingent, it's cultural, it's not rooted in nature, it's not given by God. All different cultures and peoples, we invent our moral values, we don't discover them. And yet, vanishingly few of them would be willing to say, oh yeah, I acknowledge genocide it's constructed, so in some instances genocide would be fine. Or, torture of children, if that's what you're into, that would be fine. Now, these are, of course, extreme points, extreme examples to make the point. But if those things aren't acceptable, why not? If that happens to be my, morality was culturally constructed by the Nazis in a certain way, and if they had had more power to carry it out, maybe they would have been successful. By your own criteria, then what's wrong with that? The fact is, almost nobody actually thinks that all morality really is constructed. All of it. That we really can invent our values completely. More common is that the very people who are saying, on the one hand, all morality is constructed, contingent, there's nothing given about it, are also the people who are adamantly insisting on human rights and have a hair-trigger sensitivity to the infringement of human rights. Really? Which one of those do you really believe? Because they cannot be put together. They cannot be put together. But these are the kinds of things. You want to make other people confront, in a certain sense, their really kind of assumptions and basic commitments that they haven't thought through. They have not thought through.
I used to go to church. Mum used to make me go to church. I didn't go anymore.
It takes one generation from inadequate adult catechesis to non-church attendance, and then it only takes one more generation from non-church attendance to unbelief.
It's so hard to find God in the culture. It's so hard to find reason to believe in the culture.
One guy came to me, high-powered businessman, and he said, I retired to have my remote control on my golf clubs, and I'm dying. I'm dying.
People want mystery, they want art, they want culture, they don't want to just understand, they want to feel. And that's starting to happen.
I feel like I'm in a building movement, that it's growing, it's going somewhere.
Actually, I found something here. Come and see.
It's like the Gospels, that somebody has an encounter with Jesus Christ and they go and tell somebody else.
Events like World Youth Day, when you get millions of people in one place at the same time, really show in a way that no other religion can the universality and the deeply inspiring to human nature, the appeal that Catholicism has.
How central for us the claim that Jesus did not stay in his grave, but rather rose from the dead.
He's Christ, he's awesome. He's not there to take us out. He's not there to drag us down, but to love us and save us from the things that weigh us down in life.
It's not simply a matter of science. It's a matter of living in the presence of something that is way beyond us.
Where young people are really trying to take their faith out into the world, to understand it and know how to share it with joy.
This is the Catholic moment. Why? Because with the new media, you've got this explosion of imagery.
On Twitter or on Facebook, then instantly that's a global audience and that's spreading really, really quickly.
Hello, I'm Caroline Farrow. I'm a spokesperson for Catholic Voices.
Even if just one seed falls with one young person and they realise that actually God does love me, that's worth it.
We're not going to retreat to the mountain. We're a mass movement in exactly the way that Christ made a mass movement, and we're in it for the long haul, and we're in it to win.
Good. Thanks all for watching that. It'll be coming out next fall for the school year. I'm going to head down now to the Word on Fire booth. I think it's 2 floors down from here. I'd be very happy to talk to you, visit with you, but I'm just going to go right down there. So thanks for listening, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Father. I know that many of us will be anxious to follow you right down there. But one thing I want to promise you, we are not whatever people. So we're filled with fire for our mission. Thank you. And now I'd like to invite you to end this morning. The exhibit hall is now open, and I bet some of you are looking for lunch. So we'll see you later this afternoon. Bye-bye.